Welcome to Carl DeGregorio's Death Session 39. 39. How does that go? How does that work? Nice, nice. Thanks for checking us out. Again, the pluralization of my process. But that does bring up a point. I do straddle the fence on belief systems. But the idea that we are a we, not a me, and that's probably the problem of getting into societies and getting into countries and labeling and borders and all that stuff, that we take the we and we put the me first. And I think that could have been a bit of my trouble creatively, because at your best when you are creating, you are saying, not this is my story, but this is our story. I am one of you. You are one of me. There's a give and take. That's the problem with content, isn't that process. That content is as a quality of commodity. And art, hopefully, and art not with a capital A, but like art is like a sharing of a story. You can make fun of a band like Poison, but that is art of the party, art of complete hedonism. And the human societal thing will judge Poison as a shit band, and maybe they are, but I Won't Forget You, Babe's kind of a jam, and Talk Dirty to Me can get you kind of rocking out. They're terrible, but that is the art of hedonism at the time, through a band from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, wherever the fuck they're from, and wherever the fuck they're from, and so that's judgy to say they suck. They connected, and I have always sided, I think, with the higher brow parts of society, the anointings, the labelings of what's good and what's not. And I think that's held me down, because I have felt my connectivity with people through audiences, through just massive conversations, just being easily a magnet to attention. And when you take the need base out of it, that was the channel that I want to stay on. That's the channel I probably want to bring with my show. So the belief system being we're a we and not a me is counter to individual. When you pay taxes, it's your individual tax return. Everything in a society is the individual tax return, the social security number. And it's a double-edged sword, because yes, you live as if my soul counts. I count. Count me. Census, count me. I matter. You live that way, and individual rights, and those are important. Yes. And that, I'm not trying to say a collective we should just be on communes. No, I don't mean that. I just mean that when you go to the market of art or music, the things that connect are the universal, which can be very specific. So my individuality puts the words on my script in my particular order, in my particular flights of fancy, the things that are important to me. I say those with idiosyncratic need to express, and then they come out. And if it's working, hopefully, please God, if it connects, and that's really all that matters, is if I connect, is if they connect, then that would be the we part. Like, oh, I see. I'm a guy from Nebraska, but this guy from New Jersey had similar feelings. That's the we part, right? And so that's the channel I'm trying to stay on. And previously, I think, previously I was always trying to get on the judge channel, the channel of he's and theys, and the channel of the tastemakers, and that sort of what's important in our society, who picks, and yet I was drawn also to punk rock and hip hop and things that were off. Everything gets on the grid eventually, right? So But where I was hampering myself was passing muster with the intelligentsia, and that you find out is folly and will slow you down, and you can't really control that anyway. And some of that stuff is fast tracked, and some of that stuff is born of where you're born, things like that. To the manner born gets to, how do you even get to those rare air? If you notice, every rom-com, I wrote one, myself included, I walked right into it. Every rom-com is set up into a point. Every rom-com set in a media company, a magazine, as if those are even viable today. It's a I think it's because those are jobs where they have open floor plans. They're white collar jobs, but there's a little tinge of creativity, a little tinge of flexibility. It's not like for a while there's a lot of, and the reason there are a lot of police dramas, it's just how you get stories with multiple groups. And so it's not the industry that but those people want those jobs still, even as it dwindles. And how do you get them, And I think that's probably what is occurring with arts and movies, right? That's always been the case. There was never a good time, probably since the talkies, there was never a good time to get into this as a business. It's a terrible business model. It's a terrible rate of exchange for anyone starting out. So why would you do it? And then that's what I'm hoping to get back on that channel. But you see how fast I get the negatives swirling out of my mouth. I've rehearsed those because those are the rehearsed words of the group. So the group can also do you damage, right? The collective can say, don't go into the arts, do STEM. All right, so now you want to do STEM, but if AI's taken over even that, then what's the fucking point, right? So when they said a long time ago that England was a nation of shopkeepers, like what's it going to be in America? A nation full of influencers or a nation full of vloggers? But I'd like to say that I reserved my slot a long time ago and relegated myself to this pursuit. And so as I get closer, I have firmly booked the 21st as a first reading of this play that is currently called Non-Toxic. I'm also thinking of calling it Middle Brow, and then I'd have some marketing with my eyebrows, which might be the way to go. Middle Brow, and then you could see my eyebrows arcing over the title. Middle Brow being what I'm trying to address is if you are not to the manner born and endeavor into art, you fall in that middle brow, and that becomes a pejorative. So the Bolshoi Ballet, the chamber music at Lincoln Center, that's the highbrow. And then anything else is middle brow, and then I guess there would be low brow, right? But middle brow would be, sticking to your script, son. You're from the suburbs, you're going to be a middle brow artist. And that stuff was damaging to me. And it damages me today because I'm recounting these stories, and the things I want to share are a little highfalutin because I don't have the struggle narrative, and nor do I want to sell that as even a potentiality. I have had hardship in so much as we all do. We've all had our hearts broken. We've all broken bones. We've all skinned our knees. We've all the real middle brow dramas that are now out there are the empty nest stories, saying goodbye to your kids. I've been the one leaving. I haven't been the one saying goodbye. I can't imagine. That must be gut wrenching. And because we've done this to our society, where that is a privileged story to tell, that there's no sympathy or there's no connecting to it unless you've been through it. And I don't want to play that game. I want to play the game where, we're not assuming anything. So that is a universal story for all of us, right? The only thing we share in common in the middle class is that little phrase. It doesn't have necessarily a color to it. And you assume a lot when you think I went to a pretty good school, and I hung out at the Black Special Interest House, and I found myself on the lower end of the economic ladder there when it got down to it. And so we were all, there together. And that's sort of what I'm trying to say about why I chose what I chose. And I have to remember I chose it, because when you get sad about what you're doing, the results are yours, and that can get, a little edgy that can get you sort of in a bad spiral of pitying yourself when it's you chose this. I had other options of study. I had other options, and while these things seem and felt inevitable, maybe because of psychology, they weren't in actuality. And so it is incumbent on you to get out of those cycles. And now I think I don't know if you noticed, but I have a little pep in my step, and it's because I have this date in mind. I've been reading my script over out loud to get so familiar with the words that I'm not going to stumble and stutter when I do have a few people in my inner circle checking this stuff out. I want to at least be prepared, and I also want these things not to surprise me. And the beauty of it is I have a couple of modular pieces that were from my stand-up, and those are still there, almost in memory. And those make me feel good, even though they feel a little well-worn. Those make me feel good that I wrote them a long time ago, and they hold water, and we'll see. I don't think those are on the chopping block. I've been running for time, and one day I read for time, and I pressed pause to use the restroom, and I didn't press it to start again, so I didn't get an accurate read of the time. And now I know it's over. It's way over. And I have to, go through that process. I'm probably going to do that. Here's the other thing. I'm going to do that before I put it in front of people, because I think when you start to do, quote unquote, the workshop, you stand by what you have, but the rewriting comes from the desk work, the desk session. So my desk sessions have been starting with, what's got to go. Some of it could be just the verbiage is too pedantic, or there's double explanations, triple examples. I'm looking for that stuff. And I have to say it, I can't get past it. It's verbiage, you motherfucker. Every time someone says, the verbiage, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you mean, and I want to correct them so badly, but it's verbiage. And it only really applies in the case I used it. Now I'm sounding like a douche, but verbiage is it's the word salad is a synonym for verbiage, not that the verbiage is just, doesn't just mean text or what you say. Verbiage is too much garbagey words, so I have to thin my verbiage, and so that I don't bore or over explain, or I am a classic. They say the rule of threes. I have some five examples because I can't let go of the accuracy, or I can't let go of what I'm now starting to deal with is I don't want to let go of getting a shot at it, Good friend of mine, we many years ago we saw 8 Mile together, and that was really kind of inspiring. It was like Rocky for the hip hop thing, and it was that whole Eminem thing. It was really good. And then Lose Yourself is the fucking great song. And I think to make it dramatic, he says you only have one chance to blow. Do not, that whole thing. And you get more than one chance. But I know what he means. I think it's the metaphor being one chance being your life. Because if he thought you only had one chance, he blew it, right? He chokes in the first act at the first rap battle. Bunny Rabbit, Eminem's character, whiffs at his first attempt to rock the mic, and so he's got at minimum at least 2 chances in that. But what he's saying is, we don't get to choose how many chances we get, and maybe a lot of them are in your past, and so what happens is when you're creating on spec when you're creating, independently, is you fucking, you think you got to put the kitchen fucking sink in there, and you think these little asides that are inside jokes with your boys like that may not be enough to keep an audience, and you have to look for that. And that's kind of what I'm going to do between now and the 21st, is try to thin that out, as opposed to things got to go. I think things have to flow a little faster, but I mean, I'm thinking I got to get like 15 minutes out of this thing, and I'm reading it fast, and I'm not doing any of the stage motioning and taking time for laughs. So I think it actually would be longer, and it needs to be a tight hour, or 150, or it needs to be 55, so that the acting and the stage movement and the lights and the sound, those can make up the rest, and you have an hour. And that's why this will be very informative to read and to do out loud, and to understand where the fallow periods are, or and I'm getting excited. I can tell you though, I don't know if this represents the subconscious, because I still haven't figured that out. And that's my girlfriend had a sales Zoom, but like a motivational speaker, but the guy sounded really dope, and he quoted Jung talking about how you have to bring, your subconscious and your conscious mind have to sort of sync, and then you can start living your destiny rather than your fate, and it was incredible that she brought it up when she did, because I had booked the time in the studio. I have a little friend was able to broker a little studio space. It's going to literally be like it's got 2 rows of seats, but it's more for where they do auditions, and it's where the client would sit or the director would sit. But I'm going to do that for a few friends, and I'm sure it's going to be, sorry, can't make it on some cases, and that's fine. But as soon as I had it booked, a lot of dread came up. Rather than let's fucking go, because you got to read it once out loud to get it to twice, to get it to 3 times, to get it to where it's ready to travel. And the sooner the better. And the one chance that Eminem is talking about, like you're starting that ball rolling, and that's excitement, not dread. And why was dread coming up? And so subconsciously, I think, if I'm able to piece this together, and you're using a lot of terms that people spit out ad nauseum and at will and inappropriately, but I think the dread came up, and I just used that word right now. I didn't seek that word. But that's what it felt like. Oh fuck, I got to do this. And I think that is the subconscious mind, or the shadow self, I think, is also what Jung talks about. And it's a reflex of when you think you're going to start doing good. And that is why you have to fight through. And I think that's where the syncing of the unconscious, subconscious, and the conscious, because consciously you want to win everything. Consciously you want to win at fucking Monopoly. Consciously you want to have your name in lights. Consciously you want to be Pacino, De Niro, DeGregorio. That's consciously what I've wanted. But subconsciously you're like, fuck off. Subconsciously you're like, fuck, that ain't gonna happen, dog. Not for you, not for them. That's the stuff that is, sadly, to be honest with you, what goes on, I think. Unspoken, unacknowledged, just tamped down. And so then when you do something to get you toward that thing that consciously you've dreamed of, which is a small step for mankind, right? A little small step for man, but just reading your damn thing, and it can't go on TV because it's going to be in a room with few people. But when you start taking that step, that's a good thing. That's consciously what you've been after. The subconscious, the dread is the conflict within yourself to be in the sun, to be in the daylight, to be on stage. And I think everybody's life is to be on stage. I think fortunately or unfortunately, I think everyone has these moments, whether they're performers or not. And these are the tests of the subconscious fighting. And I think aligned people exist. That's the other thing. I think there are aligned people who only know Oh, I just finished this. Let me go start reading it at open mics. Oh, I just finished this. Let me book a theater and do it. You know, that's someone who's aligned the subconscious with the conscious, you know. It's not unsafe for them to put your neck out there, to put yourself out there. And that's what I've been trying to do with this death session, with any of my output. And, you know, it's what the effort is, what the show will be ultimately about. And I guess the kind of regurgitating, you know, you keep trying, like, how can a one-man show be a whodunit? Like, I could tell you that story, but that's like a campfire story. A one-man show is literally you saying what's going on in your heart at the time, you know? And why would I keep searching for a different theme than persistence in the arts, that I still have a dream, I'm still in it to win it, you know? I mean, Stallone is considered one of the, you know, most successful entities in Hollywood beyond the critics, but he's been regurgitating the same fucking thing over and over and over because he wasn't supposed to be there, right? That would be the middle brow, you know. Sylvester Stallone didn't go to Carnegie Mellon like I did, and then so he had to make his way, and then I thought I was aligning with that highbrow stuff, the Shakespeare, the, you know, and I do love that stuff, but it just didn't jibe with how the career went for me. And because I was trying to be an aspirant in a race that could or would or should or didn't have me at the time, and I don't want to use middlebrow as a pejorative like it's described as. I want, you know, a lot of people shun you know, John Grisham and people like that. But now, thankfully, a lot of that old stuff is dissembled a little bit. And so while John Grisham in literary circles is considered middlebrow, and all he's guilty of is being purchased or selling units. But when they do, you know, and Scott Turow, I'm going to now transition into Scott Turow, who's a little bit up the market from John Grisham, I guess, by literary circles, but Scott Turow is in that thing, and now Presumed Innocent is considered prestige television because television's on the wane, right? Because now there is other media that people consume. So it's gone all the way to such a thing as prestige television exists. When I was a kid, there was Battle of the Network Stars, and that's not what I was training for at Carnegie Mellon, to do the 50-yard dash against Ahmad Rashad, you know. And I was highfalutin, and I wanted to be. I mean, a one-man show is still gonna be, it's still theater. You're still gonna have such a small piece of the pie that can possibly see this thing, even at a high end. So it's got to be about something else. And I think somehow I've been fortunate enough, and to say my show is about me being unfortunate is true to a degree. Like that's the persistence thread. All these crazy shows I did in crazy fucking parts of the world, terrible one horse towns, doing stand up or doing theater and doing a fucking play in a trade show. Like it just badly conceived ways of trying to do this thing. That's part of the glee in the struggle to get to this, but that's the struggle part, not that I was born put upon or anything like that. And then I persist, and I guess what eventually, somehow I've given myself the privilege to be at this time in my life and still being able to goof off and get a room full of people, hopefully, or not so full, but I'm gonna do my thing. And it goes all the way back to this great song by one of my favorite artists, Oleta Adams. I think I've mentioned it before, but Oleta Adams has a song called I've Gotta Sing My Song, and her story is inspiring to me because of her lineage. I think she's from Kansas City. And she's a great singer and a great piano player, and she was playing in a hotel bar in Kansas City, and the guy Roland and his partner from Tears for Fears saw her playing in this lobby bar, and they put her on one of their records, a song called Woman in Chains. And and then they produced her solo album called Circle of Life. And I don't know how it was a hit, so I guess I heard it on the radio. But the funny thing about R&B in the 80s and 90s, R&B always had these it had a couple of singles and a couple of album tracks, and then usually a cover. A cover was either a Stevie Wonder song or like Brownstone is this great R&B. Michael Jackson's first signing on his record label was this group called Brownstone, female vocal group, unbelievable. And they do a fucking great version of I Can't Tell You Why by the Eagles. And all the way down, Al B. Sure does a version of Killing Me Softly. He also does a version of Hotel California, I think. And so there's a sort of theme about how you do an R&B record. So there's always a cover, and sometimes the cover becomes the hit. Eric Benet had Georgie Porgy. That's a Toto song. So that was like, and even though the two guys from Tears for Fears, two white guys from England, were producing her record, it was still, to me, I think it was considered an R&B record. And she has the big hit is Get Here, right? I've mentioned that before, as I've used that song as I've used that song off stage to get in a mind frame that would take me into the scene all loaded up, right? But Get Here is written by Brenda Russell, who, is an incredible songwriter. She's got her own version, but Get Here was a big hit for Oleta Adams. But on that album, she's got a cover also of she's got a great cover of a George Benson song, Everything Must Change. And I think the one song that's sort of hers that I really connected to is a song called I've Gotta Sing My Song. And it's in a gospel. She wound up having a gospel record or some hits as a gospel singer also in her career, Oleta Adams. But this song, I Gotta Sing My Song, cut through because of where I'm at with my lens, is that I think everything is a performance of a monologue, and this song is the most intimate one on the song, and all a singer does is does what an actor does, but set to music. And it's a song that seems to be her calling her mom and her dad to tell them that I know it's late, but I couldn't wait to call you on the phone. It's been a while since I've been home. All of this was my own choice, ever since the man upstairs gave me this voice. And she talks about how she has to sing her song. And the second verse, she goes, Papa thought I was college bound. You expected me to settle down, and it's like a perfect encapsulation of what she was, and I envision it in a monologue, in a stagey way where she's calling her folks, but this could have been written while she was a lounge singer in KC and not sure how it was going to go. And then she sings this song, and the two dudes from Tears for Fears put her on the record and produce it, and I gotta use it or lose it. I just can't stand to refuse it. I gotta do what I gotta do. I gotta sing my song. And that's the chorus and the hook part. And it wasn't a hit. It's buried in the album, but the album did well. But for me, that song has been so helpful for me and how I feel. And so then why would I have dread come up when I'm starting to put out the feelers, the steps, and lay the tracks of my ultimately being able to sing my song? The good news is I noticed it. The good news is I've pushed through, and now I am on the other side and excited. But I guess I'd never noticed it before, and there were probably a million ways. And if I'm really thinking about the way my nerves hit back in the day at these high stakes auditions or presentations, or when I would meet people, that pit wasn't, a lot of people say turn it into excitement, but how do you turn dread into excitement? And you can't really process it fast. And so you could really damage yourself. And I know I hurt myself and knocked out opportunities because you're this when you're nervous. You're this. This is you when you're nervous. This is you when you're nervous. Most people, nervous isn't this. They can live with you being stressed and your hand shaking and stuff, but when you shut down when you're nervous, to try not to, because you're so ashamed of yourself for not being perfectly ready to sing and dance at an audition, which is already a pressure cooker. How is that fucking normal? Like, if you're not nervous, you're deficient somehow. But when your nerves do this, hi. Hey, I'm Carl D. I'm just here to read this scene. And then you do the scene. You're like, you're doing it. You're going through the motions, and you think you're killing it, but you're just, And that probably relates more to dread, and you don't know that. But the excitement is, and I just was sometimes, I've had good auditions. I broke through a few times, but you can imagine that if the thing that I just discovered was dread at getting to shine your light, dread at the chance to win, that this is only as far as you go, or whatever the thing, that restrictor plate, that's the thing in NASCAR. They have a thing called a restrictor plate, and there've been people who've been fined because they take the restrictor plate off. The restrictor plate is so you don't get that 10% more that the other competition gets, where you can put this thing over 200 miles an hour, you don't want to do that to yourself, especially when it comes to the arts, and how hopefully unlimited we are, and how I'm trying to channel that being unlimited, and to not just, to not miss your chance to blow, like Eminem says. Another one chance, like, I think you got to take every chance as if, that's the thing, what he means when you only get one chance, as if you only get one. Because why? Why are you doing it if you're not gonna, use it or lose it, is what Olita Adams says. I got to cut these apron strings. I got to sing my song, she says. Man, it's a great song. I would recommend you listen to it. And it's so moving to me. And she plays the piano on it. And so also when you look at the way an R&B record was, you had the hit, was Get Here. I think you had a second single, which was Circle of Life. And then you had your covers and you're out. This was not intended to have mass, acceptance, or it's just such a great song, and it's just not the one, because I think it's the most gospel song, and it's kind of niche. But that's the format. But she put herself in that song when she was given probably maybe one or two slots for an original song, and maybe some of it had to be collabed with the guy Roland and his partner from Tears for Fears. And we'd all be so lucky. That's the other thing. When you find out, or when you hear people, there's a lot of podcasting, there's a lot of rock critics, there's a lot of movie critics, TV critics. You'd all be so lucky. Anybody watching this, anybody that I know, you'd all be so lucky to be as successful as Olita Adams has and still is, in my estimation. We'd all be that lucky to be that, in terms of consummate professional singing, piano playing, songwriting, in any field. So my version of being an Olita Adams in the marketplace is still a long way away, and so we'd all be so lucky to be that successful. And yet that song, I Gotta Sing My Song on that album, it might as well be buried. It might as well be in a journal. And that's why this, for me, is an interesting endeavor, because this is intimate. This is my ramblings alone in my room, the kind of things I shared in my journal as a kid in high school. And it's embarrassing to the degree that I put it out there, but it's also liberating because it's hiding in plain sight. And any successful artist barely scratches the surface of the population. Do you know what I'm saying? And all I'm saying is she's touched me. And if I'm this rabid a fan of Olita Adams at this point, I should be so lucky to be able to connect with somebody in my show. But that is the goal. That is the aspiration. That is the effort that I am taking over all these years to, quote unquote, use all my, I have a special set of skills, like Liam Neeson in Taken. I have this very particular set of skills. Mine is not to armbar Slavic men and disarm the, I can't disarm the gun. That classic action movie. I'm not good at taking the gun and reversing it on you, but I do have a certain set of skills particular set of skills, and hopefully they'll be on display. And Oleta Adams did that, and this is like an open letter to her. If I, I just want her to know that she moved me and has through the years, through the decades. And so I have a very close affinity with music, and I don't do music as my choice of art. But it is very vital to me. And I don't think that art it falls under art for me. There's this director and photographer, Gordon Parks. He directed Shaft, the big hit blaxploitation movie, and he was also, I think, the first black photographer for Life magazine. And his book is called A Choice of Weapons. And so he chose the lens, the camera, putting an eye on things, putting a focus on things as his weapon of choice. And so Oleta Adams uses music. I'm using this vehicle of a one-man show. I guess theater would be or acting would be my weapon of choice. And maybe not. I don't need the weapon. I understand he was a revolutionary person because of his struggle in America as a African American. But that is the metaphor, I guess, to help you motivate. I don't feel like I'm at war. I feel like I've been refusing to emerge or not blooming. I'm not I want to be the mussels. You get a plate of mussels. I don't want to be the one that you can't eat because you have to pry it open with a fork, and you probably shouldn't eat the one that didn't fan out. You want to be the mussel that fans out and can be eaten and dipped in goddamn white wine and butter, shallots. Man, I'm a little hungry right now. Talking about a bowl of mussels. Anyway, I've been riffing a little bit. I've been a little keyed up because I've just worked on my script, and I'm starting to see that I'm not going to, the dread has passed, and hopefully I don't have to have dread come up. And I'm going to take my shot. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to sing my song. I'm not going to miss my chance to blow. So somehow it's Carl D, Oleta Adams, and Eminem on the playlist today on the Death Session number 39. I thank you, and I'll keep you posted. Peace.